So something massive just happened this morning. A bill was passed through the Senate. This is a massive bill. $95.3 billion was just passed. But is this going to the American people? The answer is no. This bill is actually going to go to other countries, and some say this will be funneled back to weapons makers here in the US, who then can go and fund campaigns. That's what we're hearing. Now, I want to address what bill was just passed, why this is potentially going to have some issues in the House of Representatives, and what some lawmakers are saying about this. Again, this is good news for some, but bad news for many. So I will address that in just a moment. All I ask is one thing. It takes 2 seconds. Go ahead, hit that like button if you enjoy these daily updates. And now, let's begin. So for the past 6 to 12 months, all we have heard in the United States is if we do not pass additional legislation and more funding to send to Ukraine, then the United States and the American people will be at war with Russia very soon. According to reports, it stated that, and according to President Biden, he stated that if we do not fund Ukraine, we will be at war with Russia within a few weeks. Few weeks, that means 3, right? Well, this has gone on long enough. We didn't fund Ukraine. It's been much longer than 3 weeks, and we are not at war with Russia. But here's something that I thought was very interesting. According to experts, they say that statement is 100% false. They say, even if the U.S. sends more funds to Ukraine, the money would then flow back to weapons makers in the United States. Those weapons makers would spend months to maybe over a year to put those weapons together and put that package together before they finally ship it out to Ukraine. So even if we fund Ukraine today, Ukraine may not see this additional help for another 3, 6, maybe 12 months. How crazy is that? But yet, guess what we did? The Senate, just this morning, they passed a $95.3 billion aid package for Ukraine, for Israel, for Gaza, and the Indo-Pacific. Yes, it is uncertain whether this is going to pass through the House of Representatives, but at least it passed through the Senate. Here's what I can tell you, though. As of right now, a lot of people are speculating whether or not this is a good deal. Well, here's what's in this bill. First off, 22 Republicans voted for this bill. 22. Okay? This bill passed. It was 70 to 29. Almost all Democrats voted for it. But here's what's in it. $60 billion is going to Ukraine. In addition to that, there would be another $14 billion for Israel's war against Hamas. You know all those pro-Palestinian protests that are happening right now? Guess what? Experts are anticipating those are only going to increase if we send $14 billion to Israel. There's also $8 billion for Taiwan and partners in the Indo-Pacific. And there's $9.2 billion in humanitarian assistance for Gaza. So yes, $14 billion to Israel. And even though they've had, 1,000 casualties or something like that, compared to, tens of thousands in Gaza, where the city is just demolished. But we're going to send $9.2 billion there. Okay. So here's the thing. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer called this package a down payment for the survival of Western democracy and the survival of American values. I'm going to play a clip in just a moment. It's about a 5-minute long clip. I'll break it up. But this is where Senator Mitt Romney is saying that if our position is being cheered on by Russian President Vladimir Putin, then it is time to reconsider our position. Okay. Well, here's the thing. Even though this bill passed through the Senate, doesn't mean it's going to pass through the House. Because according to Mike Johnson just yesterday, he says that this bill has a lot of work before it can pass through the House. He even said that if this bill makes it to Biden's desk, it could be weeks or even months if it makes it at all. Now, Senator Peter Welch of Vermont, He had this to say. He said, and I quote, "I cannot in good conscience support sending billions of additional taxpayer dollars for Prime Minister Netanyahu's military campaign in Gaza. It's a campaign that has killed and wounded a shocking number of civilians. It's created a massive humanitarian crisis." So we're still going to send $14 billion to Ukraine or to Israel. But at the same time, now the money that we're sending to Gaza keeps going up because of all the destruction. So instead of pulling from Israel and giving to Gaza, we are just going to continue to give Israel the same amount, but the money to Gaza just keeps going up. How does that make sense? Again, we're $34 trillion in debt as a nation. Well, we'll see. Here's the problem, and it goes back to that $34 trillion. By supplying more weapons and new funding a new package to Ukraine, we're simply tying ourselves to more debt in the future. This report says all signs point to Russia winning this war. Ukraine has never had a chance, and the United States has known that for many months. But the United States cannot embolden China. Here's the thing. China is looking at this, and they are looking at this very closely. And if the United States fails, China could then go in and invade Taiwan. If they do, according to President Biden, he would back Taiwan, and the United States and China would be at a war. Well, I don't know if this happens, but again, there's only one way to find out. Now, Putin, Russian President Vladimir Putin, he says he is willing to fight for years. The United States has already put in more than $100 billion. Okay, more than $100 billion, not including this additional $60 billion. Okay, so the reports indicate that Americans are already fed up with President Biden's continued support for Israel, and we're seeing this on a daily basis. Okay, a bridge in, I believe, Vancouver just yesterday was shut down for about 2 hours. A very important bridge. Okay, so we are seeing this every single week. I want to read you one other thing before I play you that clip from Senator Mitt Romney. But Senator Tom Tillis, he had this to say just the other day, noting that the money would only help Ukraine for about 1 year, and most of the funds would go to replenish U.S. military stock, which again goes right back to all these campaign supporters, these donors. Okay? Again, what is this year? What is 2024? It's an election year. Keep that in mind. But Tom Tillis had this to say, and I quote, "Why am I so focused on this vote? Because I don't want to be on the pages of history that we'll regret if we walk away. You will see the alliance that is supporting Ukraine crumble. You will ultimately see China become emboldened. And I am not going to be on that page of history." Key phrase here. You will ultimately see China become emboldened. That's what we would see. So is this really a vote, a bill to pass money to Ukraine? Really all it's doing, what we should do, is probably get Vladimir Putin and Ukraine to agree to a ceasefire and agree to pretty much end this war. We're not doing that. We're funding Ukraine. I want to play you this clip from Senator Mitt Romney, and I will jump in every once in a while and we will discuss it. But let's listen to this.
The vote we will soon take to provide military weapons for Ukraine is the most important vote we will ever take as United States senators.
I'm going to pause that for a second. He says that is the most important vote they will ever take as United States senators. What about securing our U.S. border? Right? What about that? What about the debt ceiling? Right? What about rights for Americans? Because what's in this bill that they're discussing, there's really nothing in there for Americans. Right? But there's money in there for Ukraine, for Israel, for Gaza, for Taiwan. Well, let's keep listening.
We're not being asked to send American troops into war. We are asked to help the Ukrainians defend themselves. If we fail to help Ukraine, Putin will invade a NATO nation. He may delay his next invasion until he rebuilds his decimated military. But we must be clear-eyed. Ukraine is not the end, it is a step. If we fail to help Ukraine, China will eventually absorb Taiwan. If we fail to help Ukraine, we will abandon our word and our commitment, providing to our friends a view that America cannot be trusted.
I want to stop it right there for a second. He says, if we fail to help Ukraine, China will invade Taiwan. That's the one thing that Pentagon officials believe is absolutely true. If we fail to help Ukraine, is Russia going to invade a NATO territory? Well, that's one thing that NATO and the Pentagon have both stated, that they don't believe that is true. The Russian President Vladimir Putin has said he has no interest in invading NATO. Here's the thing, you can't really trust him. But here's the other one. The United States, as of right now, sending $60 billion to Ukraine is just a Band-Aid. They say it's a Band-Aid at best. All it's going to do is prolong this war. That's all it's going to do. It's not going to help Ukraine win this war. $60 billion is not enough. They need more. Let's keep listening.
The Chinese Communist Party is already spreading propaganda using our delay as a warning to Taiwan that the United States will not be there to help in the face of China's threat. If we fail to help Ukraine, NATO, the alliance that's prevented great power conflict for over 75 years, will falter and eventually disintegrate. If we fail to help Ukraine, America will cease to be the arsenal of democracy. It will cease to be the leader of the free world. We will be replaced by the authoritarians, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. If we fail to help the Ukraine, we'll be known not as our fathers and mothers were, the greatest generation, but as the worst generation. Now, for months, I've listened to the arguments for denying help to the Ukrainian people. I've observed that the reasons have evolved over time. First, it was claimed that Europe was not paying their fair share. That was proven incorrect. Our allies have already contributed more than $96 billion in aid, and the EU earlier this month agreed to provide $54 billion more over the next 4 years. Next, it was argued that we should instead focus on the Pacific and Taiwan. But Taiwan and Japan and South Korea tell us that the single best thing we can do to dissuade China's aggression is to support Ukraine. Next, we were told that we couldn't afford $60 billion for Ukraine-related funding. But somehow we can afford an $850 billion annual defense budget and annual trillion-dollar deficits, which has happened under both former President Trump and President Biden.
I want to pause that right there. He says we couldn't afford $60 billion, but we can afford an $800 billion defense package. You know where the $60 billion is going? Back to those defense contractors. Back to pay for military equipment. That's what it's going to. So essentially it's the exact same thing. So what he's saying, oh, well, we couldn't afford it because of this. Well, that's exactly why you can afford it. This is part of the problem. Now, one thing he also brought up was the allies of the United States are saying that the best thing that we can do is support Ukraine. The allies are not going to tell us the best thing we can do is not go and help support them, but go and support Ukraine. That's the best thing. Why would they tell us that? They won't. They would not do that. It makes absolutely no sense. Let's keep listening.
Next, it was claimed that we would have insufficient weapons to defend America and Israel if we send more weapons to Ukraine. But the Department of Defense has explained that helping Ukraine will actually strengthen our national security by helping to rebuild our depleted military-industrial base.
That is true. Exactly what he just said. That right now, today, the United States military is somewhat weakened. And it's weakened today because we are sending all this equipment to the Middle East. We're sending it to Ukraine. We're sending it to the Red Sea. We're being attacked by Iran and Iranian proxies. right? Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. We also have a threat right here at home, the U.S. southern border. But do you hear anything about the U.S. southern border in his talk? No. Do you hear anything about the threats here on our homeland? No. You hear anything about the $20 billion that didn't get passed for border security? No. Let's keep listening.
The latest excuse for denying aid to Ukraine is that this bill is a clever disguise to set up an impeachment of Donald Trump at some point in the future. Under this so-called logic, Trump has to be elected, Democrats have to win the House, and those Democrats have to be unable to find any other indiscretion of Donald Trump's upon which to base an impeachment. Now, I know that the shock jocks and online instigators have effectively riled up many in the far reaches of my party. But if your position is being cheered by Vladimir Putin, it's time to reconsider your position. Now, I can't see into the future, but there are no guarantees that Ukraine will defeat Russia. But that does not mean that we should stand back and let Putin have his way with Europe. What sending weapons to Ukraine does do is help discourage further Russian and Chinese invasions, which could draw us in. It helps preserve NATO. It allows America to remain the leader of the free world. And it shows that we honor our word to our friends and allies.
So he just said right there, does it guarantee Ukraine wins this war? No, it doesn't. But what it does guarantee is that Russia and China understand that the United States will fight back. They will help our allies. That's all it's doing. So, and I want to be very clear on this. I'm not going to play any more of this video, but what you need to understand is what they are passing is a bill that's just showing that the United States has a little bit of power. That the United States is willing to push some funding and some additional weapons to Ukraine. But again, are they going to win the war? No. Every indication points to no. They will not win this war. Russia is going to take over part of Ukraine. And until President Zelensky actually accepts the fact that they don't have the backing of the entire world, Russia is going to keep attacking, well, Ukraine is still going to be in this middle of the war. So all I can tell you right now is this bill passed through the Senate. It has a little bit of work to do before it gets passed through the House, but we will see if it actually happens. All I can tell you right now is there's a lot of speculation as to why many lawmakers are even passing this at this time. So that's where we're at this time. Again, as soon as I know more, I promise I'll come back on and share all latest news and updates. But that is what we know as of today. So again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.